King Jesus, King Jesus. In my last video on the Second American Civil War, I talked about how Obama was winning the Proxy Civil War overseas against the Zionists and the political civil war here at home against the Zionists and the Zionist-controlled Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives. And Obama is making it look easy. He's out there playing golf, enjoying himself, hitting a little white ball all over the grass, going to weddings, going to outings with his daughter. Obama seemed to be having a good time. But then his opponent in the civil wars, both the civil wars overseas and the political civil war here at home, the Zionists and their Zionist henchmen, the so-called Jews, who are not even Jews, but they are Khazars, Ashkenazis, and Yiddish, who infest this country through their black magic, bank, and money power, and infest the world with wars and destruction all over the world. Anyway, these senators lashed out at Obama over the weekend. As I said in my last video, which I leave a link to at the bottom, I told them to stop crying. But they're crying all the more worse now. They lashed out at Obama saying he's cautious for belittling ISIS as a minor league threat and describes his foreign policy as in a free fall. The leaders of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees criticized President Obama on Sunday, demanded he show leadership on the issue of homegrown ISIS terrorists attacking the U.S. homeland. There are no terrorists in the United States attacking the homeland. They're exaggerating. You know, exaggeration is a lie, so they're lying to you. It says leaders of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees on Sunday prodded President Barack Obama to take decisive action against what they say are growing threats from Islamic State militants on U.S. soil. Why should he listen to his enemies, the Zionists and their henchmen in Congress, who they pay with the money they print, which they've usurped from the American people through bribery and corruption? It says the lawmakers, one Republican and one Democrat, offered bipartisan pressure on the White House to turn back the hazard of Islamist fighters who have taken control of vast swaths of Syria and Iraq. Those militants now are looking toward the United States or Europe for the next targets, the lawmakers said. They're just lying to you. First of all, the Iraqi forces done broke through ISIS because of U.S. air strikes and aid drops, ending 2 months of Islamic State siege. The Kurds also have routed ISIS and driven them back. So, like Obama has another success. As the pictures here show, the Iraqi forces seem to be reinvigorated. They're fighting rigorously against ISIS. So Why are these senators and congressmen complaining? They should be applauding Obama's successes. If they were loyal Americans, you would think so. The Iraqis are doing a spectacular job defending their own country against ISIS. Why do you need more Americans to die for Jews, fake Jews in Israel? They're doing great. Absolutely. A well-trained fighting force, rescuing children from ISIS. Rescuing children. So it looked like they would come on TV and praise Obama. No, but they're not loyal Americans. They work for the Jews. You vote for them, and they work for the Jews. First up is McCain. You know, McCain is he was co-founder of ISIS with Al-Baghdadi, who was a trained Israeli citizen for Mossad, by the way.
Now we're facing the largest, most powerful, wealthiest terrorist organization in history, and it's going to require some very strong measures to defeat them. And they must be
co-founder.
Contained. And first of all, we have to have a strategy. The president said he didn't. But what are our goals there? If you want to build coalitions, what are you telling our allies? That we want to save people who are stranded on mountaintops or protect American troops? You have to have a specific.
You should praise the president.
ISIS.
If he wasn't an enemy of the country.
Understanding that ISIS has obliterated the boundaries between Syria and Iraq, main headquarters being in Syria. So we have to get better weapons to the Peshmerga. We have to have airstrikes in Syria as well as Iraq. We have to arm the FSA, the Free Syrian Army. One of the biggest mistakes ever made, in my view, in recent times was the president's overruling his entire national security team, including the Secretary of State that argued 2 years ago for providing weapons for the Free Syrian Army. That was a seminal moment.
Hillary.
Remember, this is the president said it's not a matter of
y'all gonna vote for Hillary.
when Bashar al-Assad would go. We have to have reconciliation between the Sunni and the new government in Iraq, and most of all, we have to have a clear strategy dictated by a policy, and that policy has to be we have to defeat ISIS, not contain, not stop, but defeat ISIS because they are a threat over time to the United States of America.
Let me pick up on that, Senator McCain. Are you saying we are at war and should say so?
Encouraging war. This is you encouraging war. Fake Jews.
Special forces into the mix.
McCain gonna go for it.
Requires additional U.S. troops, not ground combat units, but it's going to require some more special forces. It's going to require some more forward air controllers. It's going to require some more advisors for training of the Iraqi military, which right now is, as we all know, near collapse. And we have to also work closely with the Kurds and help especially with weapons to the Peshmerga, which is a very they can fight, and Iraqis will fight, but there has to be a policy and a strategy to implement that policy. And first, we have to tell, if we want to build a coalition, we have to tell those people what our goals are. And these people, by the way, are very cynical, particularly the Saudis and others, because we said we were going to strike Syria, and then the president reversed himself without even telling them.
Is this a war footing we should be on with ISIS? Does it represent that much of a danger? And should that be the organizing principle of the strategy whenever it's developed?
I think it starts with an understanding that this is a direct threat to the United States of America, that it may be one of the biggest we've ever faced. I was astounded when the President of the United States said that the world has always been messy and it's been accentuated by social media. That means that the President of the United States is either in denial or overwhelmed. He's either in denial or overwhelmed, one of the two, because whether it be Ukraine, which maybe we'll have time for a few minutes on, but this is a direct threat to the United States of America, and we are seeing, of course, Vladimir Putin on the march in Ukraine.
What should be done in Ukraine? The president's talking about more economic sanctions when he meets with NATO leaders next week in Europe.
First of all, we've got to realize what Vladimir Putin is. He's an old KGB colonel that wants to restore the Russian Empire. When Yanukovych was overthrown peacefully by the people of Ukraine, indicating their commitment to being part of Europe, Vladimir Putin had to take Crimea because of his desire to have that naval base and access to the Mediterranean. Then Vladimir Putin thought that he could excite enough separatists, enough pro-Russians in eastern Ukraine to establish some sort of area under his control.
Right, but what to do next? What to do now, Senator King?
What to do now is impose strong sanctions. Do you know that we wouldn't even give intelligence information or weapons to Ukraine? Give them the weapons they need. Give them the wherewithal they need. Give them the ability to fight. They will fight. And as far as Vladimir Putin is concerned, put strong sanctions. If you're looking at it from Vladimir Putin's viewpoint, Major, he's done pretty well with minimum of penalty. And as long as the Europeans are dependent on his energy supplies, they're not going to do much.
Senator, I've talked to people at the White House who say the last thing that region needs is more weapons. That's making the situation worse. You disagree. Why do you believe the introduction of U.S. weapons would make a difference on the ground in eastern Ukraine?
For God's sake, can't we help these people defend themselves? This is not an
For devil's sake, kill us.
Has there been an act of war committed by Russia against Ukraine?
I think from a Ukrainian standpoint, you would say that. He's establishing a land bridge all the way to Crimea, and he may then threaten Moldova and the Baltics if he continues to succeed. When you say it's a quote war, it's a conflict that requires our participation, not through American ground troops, but our participation, our help, and our leadership. And that is what seems to be missing. Libya now is collapsed into a failed state. That is what happens when you lead from behind. And we are now facing more crises in more parts of the world than at any time since the end.
You losing.
Senator King, before I let you go, I want to talk to you about
You losing. Stop crying.
1,500 dead.
Stop crying.
Already 20,000 predicted the next to be more directly involved.
That's what came.
Expanding.
Next they drag out
The fact is they have been on the march
the Grand
for
Jewess
months, if
herself
not years. So
out
why
of the
does
cloisters.
the president still say we don't have a strategy yet? Doesn't that project weakness from the White House? Well, I mean, I know what you want me to say, but I'm not going to say it in that sense. I think I've learned one thing about this president, and that is he's very cautious. Maybe in this instance, too cautious. I do know that the military, I know that the State Department, I know that others have been putting plans together. And so hopefully those plans will coalesce into a strategy that can encourage that coalition from Arab nations. Jordan's at jeopardy, Lebanon's at jeopardy, the UAE and other countries are in jeopardy. So there is good reason for people to come together now and begin to approach this as the very real threat that it in fact is.
The president back in January told the New Yorker magazine, David Remnick, that ISIS is the JV team. That was clearly wrong.
Well, I think it's wrong too. I think it's a major varsity team, and if you want to use those kinds of monikers. But I've seen nothing that compares with its viciousness. I've been on the Intelligence Committee now since before 9/11, and I've watched this evolution of non-state actors into world terror very carefully and closely. And this is really the first group. It's the wherewithal in terms of financing, the fighting machine in terms of a structure, heavy equipment, heavy explosives, the ability to move quickly. They crossed the border into Iraq before we even knew it happened. So this is a group of people who are extraordinarily dangerous, and they'll kill with abandon.
Was that an intelligence failure, or was the White House not listening to the community?
Well, I think our intelligence in Syria has not been good for a number of reasons. But I do know that the breaking through of the borders was not known ahead of time. I think a lot of that hopefully has been repaired now, and I think the intelligence community is well aware of the need to get up and running in a major way, both in Iraq and in Syria.
And do we have to go to Syria to get at the root of ISIS?
Well, I don't know exactly who is where when, but there's no question. But they have a whole base in Syria. They have expanded that base now into Iraq. That part of it is a fighting base, and it is devoted to taking over cities. It failed to hold the Mosul Dam, thank God. I believe it is on its way to Baghdad, and I believe that they will try to attack our embassy from the west, which is a Sunni area where I believe they are infiltrating now. So I think this is extraordinarily serious, and I think the president is wise in this sense.
He is wiser than you.
I understand he's trying to do is give an opportunity for this new Iraqi government, new because Prime Minister Al-Baghdadi, to begin to make the moves which offer an alternative to the Sunni people in his country.
Obama is beating you. So Obama beating all these creeps. He beating them all down. Now here we have a child molester from the Dominican Republic.
This is a watershed moment, Candy. Thousands of Russian troops are here with tanks, missiles, heavy artillery, and are directly engaged in what is clearly an invasion.
So it is a watershed moment, and just to review the bidding for our audience, we started out with some travel bans on individuals, freezing assets on some of the elite in Russia, kind of moved to companies and some sanctions there. Then we went to sectors of the economy. We now have a Russian economy that looks like it's headed toward a recession, and a Putin who's more popular than ever. Nothing has moved him. What's the next step?
Well, I think Putin has sized up the West and figured that the most difficult sanctions against Russia and the arms necessary for the Ukrainians to be able to defend themselves is not coming from the West, and we have to prove him wrong. That means we have to look at sectoral sanctions. We have sanctions within certain sectors, individuals and companies. We have to seriously consider sectoral sanctions, whether that's in the financial services, whether that's in the defense industry, whether that's in the energy industry. And we also should be providing, and I hope the NATO summit will create an opportunity for this, we should be providing the Ukrainians with the type of defensive weapons that will impose costs upon Putin for further aggression.
And let me ask you about the weaponry. As you well know, the president has not wanted to provide lethal weapons to Ukraine. He has said, obviously, time after time, this is not going to be solved in a military way. Now, I think Russia probably thinks it can be solved in a military way. What do you think of the president's rationale right now for withholding weaponry, and by that I mean lethal weaponry, to Ukraine, and can it stand?
Well, I think that was his initial assessment, and there are those in Europe and elsewhere.
Stop crying. Stop crying. Obama is beating y'all.
Weakness is a greater provocation for Putin to act than strength. And Putin only understands two things. And that's strength either because of the economic consequences that we can levy upon
with us into more significant sectoral sanctions, and also the cost to Russians as they send their sons and daughters back in bounty bags to Russia. And Russian mothers say, well, what is happening here? And that will come if the Ukrainians have the wherewithal.
Obama is not going to fight the Jews for the Jews. He's not going to do it. Y'all out of gas.
Russia has come invaded with thousands of troops, with missiles, with tanks. This is no longer the question of some rebel separatists. This is a direct invasion by Russia. And we must recognize that. When I read some of the headlines back at home that suggest that rebels are advancing in different parts of eastern Ukraine, it's not rebels, it's Russian soldiers.
And so you want the president, the U.S., and other countries, I assume, to provide lethal weaponry to Ukraine. Do you have any reason to believe that the Obama administration will do that?
No.
Well, I think that may very well be on the table right
now. No, sucker.
That these are changed circumstances. Look,
child molested.
The international order that we had invited her to since the war. Our whole effort was to get Russia and other countries to observe that you don't solve disputes by invading another country, taking over their territory, and annexing them. Russia has violated that. So it seems to me that this is a test. From my perspective, Putin has a war against Europe being fought on Ukrainian territory, because everything that he despises about Europe is what he's concerned about Ukraine moving towards. And so at the end of the day, this is also about our concerns globally. If there is not a heavy price for Russia to pay for its invasion of Ukraine, then what do we say to China in the South China Sea? What do we say to Iran as it seeks to pursue nuclear weapons?
No, we ain't fighting.
And the Korean continent, the Korean peninsula. These are consequences that even flow far beyond the conflict that is taking place here. And that's what we have to think about in terms of our national interest security, to preserve an international order that ultimately observes the rule of law and doesn't ultimately violate it by invasions and territorial annexation.
So, Senator, if I'm hearing you correctly, you say the circumstances have changed. Russia is now at war in Ukraine, and the U.S. has to, and the Obama administration has to change its approach to arming the Ukrainian army.
No, he's not.
I think the European Union, NATO, as well as the United States, has to consider that this is dramatically different, and we have to give the Ukrainians the fighting chance to defend themselves. I'm not suggesting U.S. troops here or NATO troops here,
right,
but I am suggesting that the Ukrainians have the wherewithal to fight for themselves.
Senator Bob Menendez.
So there you have it. Obama is not going to be fighting for y'all Jews. You can forget about it. You know, your shills and your henchmen in Congress is not going to change his mind. He's through. Y'all through. So forget about it. Just forget about it.